Ohio State has had a big offseason so far, the addition of Caleb Downs being one of the largest ones. Also, Will Howard, Seth McLaughlin from Alabama, Julian Sayin is another quarterback, but of course he's much younger than Will Howard, so he's probably more of a depth add. They've also added Quinshon Judkins, the star running back from Ole Miss. Many people are not only calling him the best transfer portal quarterback, but also the best running back in the nation, or at least one of them. So a lot of things going right for Ohio State. And in the midst of all of that, Ryan Day has done something he's never done before, which is hire somebody to be the offensive coordinator that he intends to give play calling over to. So we'll see if that is actually going to happen. But that has been what the rumor is that Bill O'Brien, the former Alabama offensive coordinator, Patriots offensive coordinator, Texans head coach, Penn State head coach, Georgia Tech dude, I'm probably missing something there, but he has a long list of many places that he's been. And honestly, it's just kind of crazy to see what's going on with Ohio State. Not only that, but they've also brought back many of their players that could have gone to the draft. Guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Mike Hall moved on. But guys like JT Tuimoloau is coming back. Travion Henderson is coming back. Emeka Ibuka is coming back. So there's a lot of hype for these Ohio State Buckeyes right now. But Justin, I have to start with you. Of these additions, the Caleb Downs, Will Howard, guys like that I mentioned, which one of these additions or these moves do you think will be most impactful for the Buckeyes next season?
I think Caleb Downs. I think what Caleb Downs was able to do this year was absolutely absurd, and he's only going to get better and better. And just having a guy like him to kind of, be on that outside and really kind of lock that down is so big for the rest of the defense to be able to do their jobs individually and not have to make up slack, elsewhere. So just having a lockdown guy like that, first off, it's hard to find, having a big time safety out there and somebody who's going to, like I said, take pressure off of the rest of the guys, but he's very versatile and what he can do. And I'm curious to see how he develops because, it's hard to think of him being any better than he was last year, but I know Quinshon Judkins would be probably the easy choice, but Travion Henderson comes back. So that's going to be kind of I don't feel like the drop off, if it was just Travion would be crazy. I know Quinshon Judkins makes it a two-headed monster that's going to be, very, very difficult to stop. But I think, Caleb Downs is going to make a huge impact immediately and in the future. And yeah, man, I can't understand how big it is to have a guy like him on the defense.
Yeah, especially filling the safety hole that they had. They were going to most likely be starting a true sophomore in that spot this coming season, or Sonny Styles, who looks to be growing into much more of a linebacker, kind of, playing closer to the defensive line type of body. So that might not have fit him as well with safety staying back there. So it's going to be interesting to see how he assimilates into that position. Jeffrey, what are your thoughts on the most impactful transfers for Ohio State next year?
Yeah, I mean, not to downplay Caleb Downs, pardon the pun, at all, because that's a great addition. But the defense was already going to be elite. It already was last year. So, if it's a Madden rating, it went from a 98 to a 99, or a 97 to a 98. So I don't know if it makes that big of a difference, but it's certainly, depth. And again, it's a big deal. To me, the biggest addition is Bill O'Brien. And I guess a combination of Bill O'Brien and Will Howard. If you look at the games last year that were closer or they lost, which is Penn State, Michigan, and the bowl game. Now, I know the bowl game was, all sorts of craziness for who could actually play, but it was actually the offense, shockingly enough, that came up short for Ohio State to get to where they want to go. I think Bill O'Brien, from what I've heard, he's already walked in and made quite an impression on the other coaches, the offensive players. I think they needed a centralized voice that wasn't Ryan Day, as far as wide receiver coach. Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart here for Heartline. He's not a play caller. Okay. Like, he might help out with the play designs and input on the offense. So, that title was kind of title only. I don't think he was actually calling plays. Bill O'Brien is going to call plays. I was shocked to see, I guess I shouldn't be shocked, it's Twitter, but people upset that Bill O'Brien was the guy that was tabbed. I mean, what are you expecting to get out of, that's a great addition. Bill O'Brien knows what he's doing. I mean, he was good enough for Nick Saban very recently. I feel like he's going to do a good job. Now, it's going to be interesting to see how the quarterback shakes out. If I'm making predictions, I think Will Howard is the starter this year. I think the writing is on the wall for Brown and Aaron Nolan, because from what I've read, that with Julian Sayin, that was the quarterback they wanted all along. Now that they got him back, I don't think that bodes well for Aaron Nolan. So my prediction is number one next year will be Will Howard. Number two will be Julian Sayin, with Kleinholtz kind of holding the happy to be here third guy place card, with the other two guys getting out of there. So there's my big Ohio State quarterback prediction right there. So how will Bill O'Brien fit? Initially Will Howard in, but then Julian Sayin also in. Is it a platoon thing, kind of like we saw? Sorry to use this, but with Michigan, 2 years ago, when they brought JJ McCarthy along, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But you need a strong voice in the room to lead the offense to do that. And there ain't nobody that's more confident in himself and has a strong voice than Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, for sure. And I was on an Ohio State podcast talking about some of the Bill O'Brien stuff, and I was even surprised that the host of the podcast himself said this was a disaster hire, that this was a bad hire, and he was not happy with it at all. The other guy was a little bit better on the hire, but he still wasn't exactly happy with it. And my question was, who did you want? Right? I mean, sure, Joe Brady would be awesome, but Joe Brady has had a fantastic year with the Bills. I don't think that was happening unless Ohio State just really got the checkbook out there and was able to contend with some NFL offensive coordinator jobs. If you ask me, and Justin, I know that you have probably more experience with Bill O'Brien than any of us, as he
I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit.
Okay, all right, go ahead. Before I get started. Go ahead.
Just, Bill O'Brien. Okay. The thing with him, and yes, I do have a large sour taste in my mouth because he ran the Texans into the ground, essentially. As the GM, course,
though.
Yeah. Well, things weren't going great as a coach, and he was on his last leg there. And that's why they gave him the general manager role. They're like, here, we're going to let you handle everything. And that's going to be your sink or swim year. And so my thing about Bill O'Brien is, we look at his resume and the places he's been, and I get in this situation, right? Like he's a big name to get, especially as an OC with his experience. But what really has he done in recent years that gets people excited about him? Alabama had, a good season last year, but somewhat in terms of like their offense, it wasn't necessarily as prolific as in years past. So what has he really done? Penn State, he was known as kind of known as this quarterback guru, but he really hasn't done much to develop any quarterbacks in recent memory. And I don't really know what's on his resume recently that really gets people extremely excited about Bill O'Brien.
Jeffrey, you look like you want to say something. What do you got?
I would say, look at the stats when he was at Alabama. The offense wasn't the problem. And then I would say,
but I don't think it was it was improved because of him. I think they just have talent. Go ahead, sorry.
Sure. Well, they're going to have talent at Ohio State too, so we're in luck with Bill O'Brien. I mean, so he's going to be fine there.
I'm thinking of what he brings to them that, and besides 1 year at Alabama, what has he done in the lead up to that? Even
I thought he was great at Penn State. The situation, which is in the Big Ten, the situation that he took over in Penn State, I thought Penn State was going to crater horribly. They did not. I mean, it was incredible what he did at Penn State. Yeah, I mean, I think we're going all the way back to Christian Hackenberg stuff. Maybe Christian Hackenberg just wasn't good, So that very much could be what happened there. I mean, sometimes, you just can't mold the clay into what you want it to be. As far as the Texans, there were good times in the Texans for a while, and then things went off kilter for sure. But I don't know. It's just, you as a Nebraska fan better hope that you're not using NFL success and playing that into college, because I didn't think about that at all for Matt Rule for how disastrous it was in Carolina, right? I look at what he did in his 2 college stints, which was very impressive, and how that applies way more at Nebraska than the Carolina Panthers. I would say the same thing about Bill O'Brien. So he was the head coach. Now he is just the offensive coordinator. Also, he has Ryan Day sitting there who knows a thing or two about speaking, developing quarterbacks, and calling plays. So like the 2 of them together is something that you have to bring into this, yet letting Ryan Day take more of a CEO role, which he will do. But to think Ryan Day isn't going to have imprints on this offense and a say to help things out, we know that's not going to be the case.
And I agree. There's a reason I put the recent memory on there, because Penn State is what everybody points to. Even Texans fans, when he was coming over, is Penn State this, Penn State that. It's just, what has he done since? And just what he did at Alabama, like nothing really jumps off the page that he did, and nothing that he's done really in the lead up to that job has shown that he's really good at this thing, this one particular thing. Again, he was really much, known as the QB guru. That's what when he came over to the Texans, that's one of the things that was coined about him, is he's just this big, good, great with QBs. It is Sean Watson over there. And and I agree. The Penn State, what he did at Penn State was absolutely, tremendous. And again, I think a lot of this might be sour grapes from as a Texans fan, but was curious your thoughts on it, but just want to play devil's advocate there a little bit with the Bill O'Brien stuff. Overall, though, I don't think it negatively impacts Ohio State at all, but I guess I don't get the Bill O'Brien love as much.
I mean, I don't love the guy. I think he's a gigantic a-hole. Is everything that I've ever heard from him. So it's going to be interesting to see how that fits in with the staff. But something tells me him and Ryan Day have come to some sort of agreement with that type of stuff.
There were reports that he sabotaged the Texans there at the end to get out and get to New England. So
I think Bill O'Brien's number one thing is Bill O'Brien. That's for sure.
Yep.
Probably true. My highlights of things that I like about Bill O'Brien, and I'll just go through them because I've tried to have Twitter discussions, and I tried to have an intellectual discussion on Twitter a few times about this, and that's always a terrible decision. But sue me, I had faith in Twitter for a second. But here's what I have to say. Okay, every single quarterback that Bill O'Brien worked with, you could argue they had their best season in their career under Bill O'Brien. Bryce Young had 2 years at Alabama. Yes, he's young. Yes, he just went into the NFL, but still, his 2 best seasons, he won a Heisman Trophy at Alabama. Matt McGloin at Penn State had his best season by far under Bill O'Brien at Penn State. Christian Hackenberg, as a freshman, had his best season of his career at Penn State. Again, as a freshman, had his best year under Bill O'Brien. Deshaun Watson was great under Bill O'Brien with the Browns. He has been horrible. Who?
Well, Deshaun Watson was great until he turned to POS, but
I'm saying since he got to the Browns, I probably not horrible. I'm probably a little sour grapes there.
Some things have happened since.
Yeah, he has not lived up to his contract. We can say that at the very least.
Yeah.
Brian Hoyer, he had a very good year under Brian Hoyer, or Brian Hoyer had a very good year under Bill O'Brien. Ryan Fitzpatrick, that was when he had some of his magic, not his, Fitz magic season or whatever, but some of his magic started to begin when he was under Bill O'Brien. Brock Osweiler, he turned him into a very competent quarterback. And then here's for a year. He was competent under Bill O'Brien for a year.
Yeah. I don't know if he turned him into one, maybe for one season, but yeah.
Well,
I get what you're. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Yeah, for you.
For a year. And then here I have some stats about Tom Brady. You ready for this? Okay. His year where he had Tom Brady in, 2011, right before he went to Penn State. He had 5,235 passing yards that year. That was the most Tom Brady ever had as the Patriots quarterback. 39 passing touchdowns, the most ever as a Patriots quarterback. 8.6 yards per attempt, his highest of his career. 13.1.
I'm gonna give a hard assist to Randy Moss here. I just want to say.
Yeah, I was about to say. Look at the receiver core. Look at the receiver core that year.
But was Bill O'Brien there?
It's true. That's true. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's like
situation.
one of those things where it's like, hey, we almost got into a car crash, but did you get into a car crash? No, you didn't. And then finally, 327 yards per game, highest of his career. Yes, I understand Randy Moss was there, and that makes it a big impact. But that then leads into my next point, which is whenever Bill O'Brien has had a good wide receiver there, which I don't think anybody's arguing that Ohio State doesn't have good receivers, he has always done very well. Allen Robinson at Penn State, DeAndre Hopkins. They even had Andre Johnson for a year in 2014.
So he needs a receiver to be successful.
He needs somebody who can coach receivers. I don't think Bill O'Brien can coach receivers. I watched those Alabama receivers, and Holloman Wiggins was not doing good enough work, and Bill O'Brien sure wasn't either, because those receivers, I don't even think they knew what their routes were sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm being over exaggerated there. I legitimately don't know if they knew the timing in their routes sometimes when they were at Alabama. Go ahead, Justin.
No. I was just going to say, like, yeah, I get that stuff, but to coin somebody a QB guru, right? Like, yeah, maybe he was successful in those situations, and each one of those situations is different, as we kind of pointed out with the New England situation with Randy Moss. But it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, he's had success and he's had offensive success, but to name somebody a QB guru, I feel like he needs to do more with these guys to set them up for long-term success, my opinion, and developing them as a QB, not only in just their offense, but as a quarterback mechanically and with reads and stuff like that. And so, another thing to look, I try to look forward to is sustained success after. But again, a lot of this could be sour grapes from the whole Houston Texans situation. I will admit there's unconscious bias here. And unconscious bias is something that I can't really pick up on. So, if it's there, I'm sorry, but there's a little bit there.
One thing I would add, every one of us, one thing I would add is what you would have to say about Bill O'Brien, even Justin, is that there has been a variety of offenses that he has run throughout his coaching tenure. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's going to come in handy this year, because although I believe it will be an Ohio State offense / Ryan Day, what I think is that the smart thing to do with quarterbacks that aren't at the level. I mean, we see what CJ Stroud, is okay. We don't have a CJ Stroud on this roster right now. Maybe Julian Sayin gets there someday. Okay. But right now we don't have that. Run the ball. Don't turn it over. Rely on your defense. Hit, timely third down plays. That sounds like a Bill O'Brien type of offense to me. Pop a big one every now and then. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be a drastically different looking offense next year, but I will. I don't know. JR, I'd ask you this. What I said on the podcast over and over again is that's what Ohio State should do last year. And it always seemed like Ryan Day got uncomfortable where he wanted to just open it up when I don't believe he should have. And the offense never knew what it was last year. I felt the identity was either lacking or it was there sometimes and then gone. Do you agree with that? And B, is that something that you think Bill O'Brien was brought in to fix, a solidified identity?
Yeah, I think number one, a lot of the identity issues came from the fact that Ryan Day runs an offense where his quarterback does literally everything. You've heard CJ Stroud, I know Justin has because he probably listens to CJ Stroud talk about it, where he's like, hey, when I'm at the Texans, it's actually easier here because I'm not asked to do as much. I'm not asked to make every pre-snap read. I'm not asked to do all. And I just don't think Ryan Day, one, trusted Kyle McCord enough, and two, I think he was giving Kyle McCord too much at times.
Agree.
I don't think Kyle McCord is as bad as some people say. I don't think he's a bad quarterback. I just don't think he was the right fit for Ryan Day. Sure. If you go read some of my tweets, you might say, John, you were a little bit harsher on Kyle McCord than that. And I was a little bit, but we also lost to Michigan and I have emotions. Sue me. But yeah, so I think number one, that, and then number two, I think Bill O'Brien does come in to give them a little bit more of that play calling and stuff like you talked about, that he is able to take some of it off of Ryan Day. From everything we've heard is Ryan Day is still going to have his offense, which I appreciate because I think Ryan Day has a really good offense. But this is going to allow time for Bill O'Brien to work with the quarterbacks more one-on-one. This is purely speculation on my part. This is an opinion. I don't have any insider knowledge on this, but Ryan Day had a quarterbacks coach who didn't have a long history in Corey Dennis of being a quarterback's coach. And so how much did Ryan Day also trust Corey Dennis working with these guys? I feel like bringing somebody in who's worked with quarterbacks for a long, long time, and like I said, has had success, at least with those quarterbacks in his system, to be able to work well, gives Ryan Day a little bit more ease to be able to go and work with the rest of the team, make relationships elsewhere, kind of like what Eli Drinkowitz was saying before the bowl game, where he was going on and on and on about how, a weight has been lifted off of his shoulders now that he's not play calling and doing all these things. So I do want to reiterate, I don't think that this is a great hire. I think this is a good hire. Yeah. I do think there were, other guys who had been great, but I also think those were long shot hires to begin with.
I'll agree with that. I just want to play devil's advocate a little bit, but the experience can't be understated, like Jeffrey said. And then just having a guy that has that much NFL experience is a lot of recruits gravitate towards that. They like guys who've been in the league, know what it takes to get there. So,
yeah, exactly. So, all right, let's go through a few comments really fast, and then we'll move on to Iowa. We have Vols Fanatics here. Oh, look at that. An SEC show coming into the Big Ten. Thank you. Appreciate that. Hope you guys learned something about the Big Ten. Quality stuff right here. Appreciate that. Sonny, his tenure at Penn State was the best coaching job I've ever seen. I agree. I think it was.
I'd have to think.
Yeah, I don't know about ever, but it was
maybe
a very good
at Penn State.
Oh, maybe at Penn State. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Will Rogers staying at Washington per Pete Samel? That's huge. Good information there. Jim, you guys are missing the main thing Bill O'Brien brings to OSU: toughness and an edge that they desperately need. I agree. The toughness, I do think, is lacking on offense. I don't think the toughness is lacking on defense anymore. But I think that he will bring more toughness there on the offense. But Scott disagrees. He said, I don't see OSU lacking toughness. So again, on the defense, I don't see it lacking toughness on the defense. I can see some areas where it's lacking on the offense. I don't think the receivers block quite as much as maybe other receivers. But man, we could turn this into an Ohio State show really fast if we wanted to, but it's a Big Ten show. So
Lou Holtz said they don't have enough toughness. Lou Holtz thinks that.
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right. Man, I was feeling so hype when that happened during that game. Thanks for listening to the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. If this was your first time listening, we are the Big Ten Huddle. We cover all things Big Ten football and basketball. We have a long episode every Sunday, Tuesday, and Wednesday night, all at 9 o'clock. So come in, check us out, get in the chat, let us know what you're thinking. We would love to have you join us and learn more about the Big Ten.